In this step, we're going to create our contact form for our contact page. So currently, we have our div for our contact form. So inside of this div, we're going to create everything that is related with our question form. So at first, let's create simple label for our form. Like content, let's set, send us a question. Okay. For now, we can save this change and let's see how it looks like in our web browser. So here it is, we have our label for our question form, and let's make some changes for this text. So at first, in the start of this lesson, as I said, I already prepared some styles for our contact form. So I will copy all these classes without body that we currently have inside of our contact page. So let's copy this. Okay, and below our body, let's paste our content. Okay, let's align our code a little bit. So basically, these are classes that we'll use on our contact form to change appearance of elements. So first, let's copy this content question title and let's apply this class on our span. Let's define class HTML attribute and let's paste our class here. So next step that we'll do for our parent div, we'll use also class that we have. Let's use contact question class. And I will explain you what we have done for these two elements. So let's paste it here. So basically, with this class, we have changed background color for our div. It's gonna be a white color, and this means that only 10% of color will be visible. This is margin button, and we have text that is aligned in its center. With our second class, we have changed color of the text will be yellow, and our font size will be 25 pixels. So let's save our changes and let's go back in our web browser. And here it is. We have our background and also label in yellow color for our contact form. Okay, let's go back and let's start with creating our HTML form. Below our label that we have defined with span, let's define simple HTML form with form start and form end tags. For form start, let's define action, method, and target attribute. Like action, we'll not use any script. You can use any script that you want. Like method, let's set get, and like target, let's set self. So basically with action, you will do data processing for your form. Now let's create the first input element for our HTML form. Let's create label for first one. It's going to be name field, so let's set name. Okay, and now let's define some new line after it, an input element with type and name HTML attributes. Type for this one going to be text, and name for this one will be name field. So let's save our changes. And let's go back in our web browser and refresh our page. And here it is. This is our first input field for our HTML form where user can enter name. Okay, let's go back in our text editor and let's create a new input field. Let's create a new line after first input field. Next input field will be very similar to the first one, so we can copy content from here. And let's paste it in a new line. So our second field will be surname field. will be also text field, and we just need to change our name. Instead of our name field, let's set surname field. So let's save our changes. Let's go back in our web browser and let's refresh our page. And here it is. Now we have our name and surname fields. And let's change label that is currently black and it's quite not visible, so let's change this. So for our HTML form, let's define class HTML attribute. Okay, and from styles file, let's use yellow text class. Okay, let's base it for our class for HTML form. So basically all letters will be yellow for our HTML form. So now when we refresh our page, yep, here it is. Now we have label for our fields that is more visible. Let's go back in our text editor and let's create a few different fields. So next field that we'll use for our HTML form, we can use content of this one. And let's base it here. So next field will be age field. So let's change surname to age. Type of field will be number. And let's change name instead of surname to age field. Let's save our changes. So refresh our page. And here it is. We have age field that is number field, so user can enter only numbers in this input field. Let's go back and let's create a new input field. So for next field, we will create the gender and we'll use radio buttons. So let's define input element. Okay. Like type for this input element, let's set radio. Let's set name HTML attribute. Value will be gender. And let's set value for this first radio button. It's gonna be male. Let's set label for this radio button also. Let's set male. And second radio button will be very similar to the first one, so we can copy first one. And let's paste it here. Let's change male to female. Name will be the same. And let's change value to female. So now, when we save our changes and refresh our web page, we have gender radio buttons. So basically, user can select just one option between two available. So let's create one more field here. For next one, we can choose any input element from above and we can copy content of it. Okay, let's paste it here now. So next field will be tel field for telephone number. Type will be tel also. And let's change name instead of age field to tel field. Let's save our tel field. And let's go back in a web browser to check our changes. And here it is. We forgot new line after our gender, so let's add that. After female, let's add new line, okay, and save our changes. And here it is. Now we have our tel input field where user can enter telephone numbers. Let's go back in our text editor and let's create one more new field. Okay, let's create new line here. So next field will be type of question. Type of this field will be drop-down select list. So let's define our drop-down with the select start and select End tag. Like content of our select, let's define option HTML element. So now for our start select tag, let's define our name HTML attribute. Name for this field will be type field. Okay, so now for our option, let's define two available options that we will have. First one will be question about course. Okay, so for start option tag, let's define value HTML attribute. Value for this one will be course. And we can duplicate this option. And our second option will be question about lesson. And let's change value also to lesson. Okay, and let's save our changes. We can create new line here. So now if we go back in our web browser and refresh our page, now we have our drop-down select list from which you can choose one of two available options. Okay, let's go back in our text editor and let's create one more input field. Okay, so let's create new line. Next field will be question field. Like a type for this element, we'll use text area. So let's define text area. Basically using can enter here multi-line text. For start text area, let's define name HTML attribute. Like value, let's set question. And also, we can customize our text area. By default, it will take some height and width, but we can use rows HTML attribute to define number of rows for our text area. So let's set that. Like value, let's set 5. So let's save our changes. Let's refresh our page. And here it is. Now we have text area where user can enter multi-line text for our question form. And last thing that we can do for our form is let's create our submit and reset buttons. So let's go back in our text editor. Let's create some new lines here. Okay, and now let's define our input field. Basically, that is input element. And let's define type HTML attribute. Let's define submit like a type for this one because this is gonna be our submit button. Let's define value that is label for our button and let's set send. Okay, and this is gonna be our send button. Our reset button is very similar to submit button, so we can copy complete submit button. And let's paste it here. We just need to change type. Let's set type to reset. And also we can change value, that is label for button. And let's set that also to reset. And here it is. Now we have our send and our reset button, so we can save this. So when we refresh our page, and here it is. Now we have our send, that is submit, and also we have our reset button for our HTML form. Okay, so now we have all input elements that we need for our HTML form. And in the next step, we're gonna customize this a little bit.